Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Isabel Wong. Here are tonight's top stories. A Cathay Pacific staff has become the latest measles case in the city, bringing the total number to 33. Lawmakers continue to scrutinise the draft national anthem law in Legco. British lawmakers have rejected Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit deal for a third time. The number of measles infections in Hong Kong has climbed to 33. The latest case was another Cathay Pacific staff member. Yupina Ng reports.
A 26-year-old Cathay Pacific employee has become the latest airport worker to be infected with measles. The woman worked in the airline's customer service department on the 5th floor of Cathay's headquarters near the airport. The Center for Health Protection said the woman had developed a fever on Monday, followed by a rash 3 days later. She sought help at Princess Margaret Hospital's emergency department on Thursday and has been hospitalized since. The patient is in stable condition. She told the hospital that she had previously been vaccinated against measles and had not traveled outside Hong Kong recently. Her father has recently recovered from a fever and cough, but has been put under medical surveillance along with other family members. Parts of the office where the woman worked have been sealed for this infection. She's the 13th measles case that has worked at or near the airport. In an email to its employees, the city's flagship carrier said those who were not immune to the disease could wear surgical masks when they were indoors or on aeroplanes. This flight attendant said she would follow the advice in the memo, as she had to fly to Japan tomorrow, which was currently suffering its worst measles outbreak in years. But this flight attendant said she was not worried about the disease. She believed she was taking enough necessary precautions, including keeping her hands clean and wearing a mask while taking public transport. Yupina, HKIBC.
Lawmakers were scrutinising the draft national anthem law at the Legislative Council today and questioned why the bill demanded all individuals respect the song instead of the citizens, which is stated in the mainland law. Security Secretary John Lee says only high-level mainland authorities will be able to request extraditions from Hong Kong if lawmakers pass the extradition amendment bill. He also believed there are sufficient protections for those who are charged with political offences. More from Yupina Ng.
The government's proposal to amend the city's extradition laws have critics worried that dissidents and activists in Hong Kong could be sent to the mainland for prosecution. One worry was who exactly from the mainland authorities could request an extradition. Security Secretary John Lee provided some details today.
So I have communicated with my counterparts in the mainland. Their initial response is they will be centralizing requests so that it will be handled at a high level. They will centralize to ensure that the cases that are dealt with are cases that is worth the consideration of both places.
The security chief also dismissed concerns that the legislation could be used for persecution.
There are at least 3 clearly written provisions to say that political offences, no matter how they are described, they will not be surrenderable. For anybody who thinks that he may then become a political prisoner, then I think the law sufficiently protects them.
Earlier this week, the government bowed to pressure from the business sector and agreed to remove 9 types of white-collar crimes from the amendments. The revised bill will only cover 37 types of crimes, including murder, money laundering, and corruption. But some within the business sector still did not believe it was enough of a concession. The American Chamber of Commerce issued a statement yesterday, saying concerns flow primarily from the fact that the new arrangements could be used for rendition from Hong Kong to a number of jurisdictions with criminal procedure systems very different from that of Hong Kong. We strongly believed that the proposed arrangements will reduce the appeal of Hong Kong to international companies considering Hong Kong as a base for regional operations. But Lee stood by the amendment bill, saying the change would fulfill international commitments to fight organized crime.
In a United Nations resolution, signatory countries have agreed that this is only for the overall good of each country and the world. So in order to have an environment which is free of organized crime, I can only think that it will benefit business environment.
The proposed legislation would allow fugitives in Hong Kong to be transferred to the mainland, Taiwan or Macau on a case-by-case basis if Legco passes it. The bill will be submitted to the Council on Wednesday for first reading. Yu Ping, HKIBC.
Turning overseas, British lawmakers have rejected Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit deal for a third time, despite her pledge to step down in exchange for their support for the proposal. US President Donald Trump is said to have given North Korean leader Kim Jong Un a list of demands, including a call for handing over nuclear weapons to the US during the talks in Hanoi last month. The summit between US President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong Un in Hanoi ended abruptly last month, after Kim was said to have asked for all US sanctions to be lifted in exchange for dismantling the country's main nuclear facility. But reports say that on the day the summit collapsed, Trump handed Kim a piece of paper that included a blunt call for the transfer of Pyongyang's nuclear weapons and bomb fuel to the US. The document also demanded North Korea provide a comprehensive declaration of its nuclear program and full access to US and international inspectors. Washington also requested Pyongyang hold all related activities and construction of any new facilities, eliminate all nuclear infrastructure, as well as transition all nuclear program scientists and technicians to commercial activities. After the summit, a North Korean official accused U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo of gangster-like demands. Pyongyang also said it was considering suspending talks with the U.S. and may rethink its self-imposed ban on missile and nuclear tests. Analysts said the document would have been seen by Kim as insulting and provocative. However, Trump stressed he has a good relationship with the North Korean leader and he does not see the need to impose additional sanctions.
They are suffering greatly in North Korea. They're having a hard time in North Korea. And I just didn't think additional sanctions at this time were necessary. It doesn't mean I don't put them on later. I think it's very important that you maintain that relationship at least as long as you can.
US President Donald Trump has reiterated his threat to close America's southern border or launch sections of it next week if Mexico does not halt illegal immigration immediately.
But Mexico is going to have to do something, otherwise I'm closing. And with a deficit like we have with Mexico and have had for many years, closing the border will be a profit-making operation. When you close the border, also you will stop a lot of the drugs from coming in, because we take in tremendous drugs from Mexico, as you know, as well as I do. So you close up the border and you watch the drugs go way down too. But I will close the border if Mexico doesn't get with it, if Mexico doesn't stop it.
Thousands of protesters took to the streets across Algeria on Friday, demanding the resignation of the country's president. Angry protesters say they also want to bring down the entire political system, which they believe to be corrupt and out of touch. In the capital Algiers, police fired water cannon to try to disperse the huge crowds. It was the sixth Friday in a row that marches took place across the North African country. US President Donald Trump has stepped up criticism of the Federal Reserve, believing the US economy was not as strong due to the central bank mistakenly raising interest rates. Meanwhile, White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow called on the Fed to cut rates by a half percentage point. The US Federal Reserve might have taken a dovish turn earlier this month, but US President Donald Trump was still not satisfied. Trump took to his favorite soapbox to apply pressure on the central bank, saying, had the Fed not mistakenly raised interest rates, especially since there's very little inflation, and had they not done the ridiculously timed quantitative tightening, the 3% GDP and stock market would have both been much higher, while world markets would be in a better place. It was the latest attack against the private central bank by Trump, who has publicly been at odds with it for years. Meanwhile, White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow has called on the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates by 50 basis points.
The economy looks fundamentally quite healthy. We just don't want that threat. There is no inflation out there, so I think the Fed's actions were probably overdone. Basically, the president has, in effect, redesigned and redeveloped and re-engineered this economy with lower tax rates and a big rollback in regulations and opening the door to energy again, and also trade deals that I think will be very pro-growth. We don't want to jeopardize that.
But Kudlow reiterated that the U.S. president had no plans to replace Powell as head of the central bank. However, Trump plans to nominate his longtime supporter and senior fellow at a conservative think tank, Stephen Moore, for a seat on the Federal Reserve Board. Moore said earlier this week that he would consider reversing the Fed's December interest rate hike, but he was not necessarily in favor of a half-point rate cut. In tennis, fourth seed Roger Federer has advanced to the Miami Open final after defeating Denis Shapovalov. Federer made short work of his teenage opponent, beating him 6-2, 6-4 in 1 hour and 14 minutes. The 37-year-old will meet defending Open champion John Isner in the final. The Swiss ace is seeking his fourth Miami Open title. That's our main news for Saturday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Isabel Wong. Thanks for watching. Good night.